Have you installed larger tires? Today we're going to tell you why new gears and the right gear ratio is so important. So a good portion of what we do here on a regular basis involves differentials, the gears and the internals inside a front axle or rear axle. A lot of the time we get vehicles that have big wheels and tires, just like this JK behind me. When you change tires from the original size to something much larger like what's on this, it's really important to make sure that the gear ratio inside the axles, front and rear, matches the tire size. And there's a whole lot of charts and gear ratio calculators that you can use to find out what is the exact ratio specifically for you. But generally, with most vehicles, I've found that 456 gear ratio works well with a 35-inch tire, and a 4.88 ratio works well with a 37-inch tire. Now, what we're talking about when we're talking ratio is number of revolutions of the drive shafts when compared to revolutions of the wheel. So as you can see, as tire diameter changes, we need to make sure that the ratio of drive shafts to wheel rotation stays the same. And to do that, we're gonna change the ring and pinion gear sets. Behind me here in this toolbox is the ring and pinion set for this next job. This Jeep has a factory Dana 30 and Dana 44 differential in it. And this is the front ring gear and pinion gear. And as you can see, the way that we get a different ratio is most easily accomplished by the pinion. You can see this is a factory style pinion gear, not necessarily from a Dana 30. And this is the one that's going to be going in. This you can see is a Dana 30 488 ratio. And we're going to be installing that in this Jeep. Something else to think about when you're doing an installation is if you want anything else to add traction. Right now is the perfect time to install a limited slip or a locking differential. In this Jeep, we're going to be installing an ARB locker in the rear differential. Now, an ARB locker is really pretty awesome. This is an ARB for the Dana 44, and the way it works is air, compressed air, supplied from a pump under the hood that we're mounting, locks this thing together so that both rear wheels spin at the exact same speed. That's awesome because that's not how an open differential works. Right now, I'm going to show you over here the air compressor and some of the other components that are going in to make sure that this thing works correctly. Right here is the ARB Air Compressor. We're also installing a MLC from Rough Country, and this is going to all be routed inside to a switch bank so that we can easily control the ARB compressor as well as the locker. This compressor can also be used to inflate tires, which is a really nice upgrade when you're on the trail or at the beach and you need to lower the pressure for additional traction. Now, just because this guy went with a selectable locker like this one from ARB doesn't mean it's something that you have to do. There's a lot of really cool locking differentials and limited slip differentials that work in a whole lot of different ways. There are electric lockers, like what come factory in a standard Rubicon. There are cable-driven lockers, like Ox makes. And one of my favorites for a vehicle that you drive on the street a lot is a worm gear-driven True Track limited slip. With that, you don't have to wire any air lines or electric lines. It works automatically, sending power to where you need it. So once Gabe gets the wrap-up done on the compressor and the MLC from Rough Country, we're gonna move it over there and have Herm starting to do the differential upgrade and the 488 swap. When we do that, we replace all the bearings inside the differential as well. So there's 2 pinion bearings and 2 carrier bearings. We also replace the ring gear bolts, and our master installation kits also come with whatever shims that are necessary to perform perfect setup every time. So we've got the JK up on the lift. The front differential is apart, set up, and all back together. The fun part is in this rear axle. As you can see right here, we've got the new ARB Air Locker installed, and this is the copper air line that gets routed underneath the bearing cap, and we're gonna drill a little hole right here in the housing. Actually, I think it's probably gonna be over here. And that will be the spot that the air line actually comes through the differential to be able to lock that differential on demand so you can have traction whenever you like it. Of course, we've got the gear set up. This Jeep is running Revolution 4.88 ratio, and it's gonna work out really, really well to keep these tires spinning. The axle shafts are out over here. To do a ring and pinion swap, you have to remove the axle shafts. And to do it, it's pretty straightforward. Of course, you've got to take the brakes off this side, and then there's 4 bolts that go into that disc brake flange. You can see right here, there's a retaining ring, and that's what retains the axle shaft. So if you ever break an axle shaft out in the woods, take the brakes off, caliper, rotor, 4 bolts, and pull the shaft out, and hopefully it hasn't messed up anything on the inside. This is working out really well. As you can see, this Jeep is a little crusty underneath. We normally see that from vehicles that are used here a lot. We're in the Northeast in Pennsylvania, and we get a lot of salt on the road. And that's a good reason to make sure that you keep your vehicle washed off underneath. There's a lot of different ways to try and keep rust to a minimum. AMSOIL has a product called Metal Protector. There's a lot of different metal protectors that work like that. But the biggest thing you can do is keep that salt diluted. So we've got a few things to do to finish the setup yet. And then of course, we've got to put the axle shafts back in it and the differential cover on it, fill it with oil, and take it for a good break-in. We like to drive these things for about 15 or 20 minutes. That gets kind of the initial wear pattern established, as well as kind of heats up and cools the gears down so that when the customer drives it, they're not doing that initial drive. We do like to make sure that we tell people to change the gear oil after about 500 miles and take it easy on the first 500 miles of driving. So no burnouts and no towing of heavy things. Other than that, this is gonna be awesome. Herm's got another, I don't know, half a day to get it all wrapped up. So the JK behind me, we got it all wrapped up, and the customer is gonna be pumped to drive this thing with the new gears. So just to give you a quick recap, we installed Revolution 488 ratio ring and pinion sets, front and rear. We also installed the ARB Locker, which is gonna be fed by this sweet ARB compressor. Right here's the compressor, also the solenoid is right there, and this little line here is what sends air the whole way back to the rear axle to make sure that there's no issues getting stuck ever. Of course, we wired it all up to this Rough Country MLC, which makes a really nice, easy place to wire up all of your electrical accessories. And there are a lot of really nice options on the market. This one from Rough Country is just something that's economically priced and fits the JKs extremely well. So I really like how this thing turned out. Of course, let us know if you have any questions about adding traction to your vehicle. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks for watching. See you later.